Alright, so let's dive into Muse and try out some new things. Here's the list of items that we're going to be going over in the next few videos. We're going to do a site setup, including master pages and how to use text and graphics in Muse. I'm going to show you how to make dynamic menus. We're going to deal with interactivity, including slideshows, forms, and Google Maps. I'm going to send you to a video that I like for responsive web to show you those new features. And I'll show you how to export and publish your website. Let's get started. Here's what you see when you first open up Muse. Now, if you keep this welcome message here, you'll have the option to create a new site this way, or to open up a recent site. Additionally, Adobe gives some helpful resources here, including more information about responsive web design, trying out a starter design like the ones we showed in the previous video, and how to share and reuse assets with ease. You can choose not to show this again, but I find it to be pretty helpful, especially when I'm learning something new. So I'm going to close this out so we can see how to create a new site using regular Muse in case you don't have that welcome message. Put this down here. Okay, so we're going to start out with File, New Site. Now, we have a couple options here, and this is a little different than it was even a few months ago. The first thing you'll see here is you've got the option of fixed width. That's the non-responsive website where you can decide what your width would be. 960 is a pretty standard width. You can start it out with a number of columns per page if you'd like to do that, although you don't have to. You could always just, make it one and then leave it as that. And you've got your additional advanced settings. So if you're not doing responsive layout, these are the settings that you're going to deal with. Your minimum height is set for 500. Now that's the smallest it will get. Now of course, with website design, you know that the content varies, and so it will always get longer if it needs to, but it's never going to get any smaller than 500, and that's about standard. You would probably not want to make it too small. That would be a little awkward in the browser. You can then define if you want specific margin sizes or padding, your resolution. Now standard seems to be, well, the standard. You have the option to do high definition images, but they give you a warning here about like it can significantly increase your page loading times. So I would say use that pretty judiciously. And then of course your language, I'm going to go with USA. Down here is something that you should take note of. This is sticky footer. Let me explain to you a little bit what that is. So this option allows you to affix the footer element on a web page. The sticky footer is designed especially for visitors with a really large desktop monitor. It causes the footer to remain in the location that you want, even if the browser window is really huge. So this basically allows the footer to be a footer. Sometimes otherwise it's going to be like in the middle of the page if you've got a really large browser and you don't stick it to the bottom. So it'd be kind of weird. You'd have this little bit of content and then the footer, and it just would be awkward. So I can't really picture any time I wouldn't want a sticky footer, but you can turn that option if you want to. Now let's go back up here and go to fluid width. This is brand new, just as of February 2016, where they're allowing you, they being Adobe Muse, allowing you to set breakpoints for responsive web design. And again, if you're not sure about what this is, there's a lot of nice resources out there available for responsive web design and explaining breakpoints and what that means. But ultimately, the shortest version of that is breakpoints define how the site looks at a specific width. So a certain width would be for mobile, a certain width would be, you could have multiple widths, but a certain width would be for tablet, a certain width would be for, let's say, a laptop, and then you'd have maybe Gigantor browsers, and you can define any one of those or multiple versions of those if you'd so choose. And again, you have similar options here with your max page width. That's the largest it will get, and that's good to define that because otherwise, if you have somebody on a huge browser and you don't define that, or you define it as really big, stuff's going to be really spread out, and it just might be not what you're looking for layout-wise. You can also define your columns. And again, you can toggle your advanced settings here as well with your minimum width, your minimum height. And these matter more now because we're talking about the smallest you want your website to be, including for things like a tablet or a phone. So you want to define that carefully and know what your minimum width you want to have, and the minimum height like we had just discussed with the fixed width. And again, you can define your margins, You can choose your resolution, just like the other one, your language, and then again, sticky footer. And this here is nice. Adobe in general does really good tooltips, but this here really shows you exactly what they're talking about. So if you're ever not sure, let Adobe help you out with your different definitions that they provide if you just hold your mouse over your cursor over the wording. So let's use this for now. We'll just use the default. So just like you choose the elements to create a print page, we're going to use that to create a website. So we want to define what each page is going to be. Now, like if you were creating a layout for a magazine, you'd probably have a pretty good sense of what page, how many pages there's going to be, how many advertisements there has to be. You know that there's certain things that are always going to be there, like your table of contents. So you have that already defined. Websites should be the same way. Now, websites are a little more fluid than print. You know, once you send something off to print and it's printed, well, that's pretty much it. Websites, by definition, can be added to or taken away dynamically, which is great, but you still want to try and have a sense of what content you're expecting to have in a site. That's just a standard practice. What I really like about Muse in particular is when you go to this plan view that's up here in the upper right, it shows you a bird's eye view of Muse and all your different pages that you have available. So by default, you'll have one master page and one automatically does homepage. So it just makes sense. You have to have a page to have a website. And down here you have a master because they allow you to have master pages. So you're going to have at least one master and at least one page, minimally. This also lets you structure the relationship between pages in Muse. And we'll talk a little bit about that here in just a second. But what's important about this is when you structure your pages appropriately, when you go to create, let's say, a dynamic menu, Muse uses this information that's going to be in here to create that dynamic menu. So you'll want to take the time to sort out your pages properly and have them defined. You can always change them, but just know that what is defined here is what will be defined in your dynamic menu. If we want to add a couple more pages, we can simply click the plus sign beside it and it will show you insert a page. So let's call this one about. We can also do, we can also do page, add a new top level page if you want to do that alternatively. And let's do one more, portfolio. Now these are all top level pages. Let's say I add one, a client calls me up and is like, hey, I need one for my dog. And they're like, you know what, that's a terrible idea. I don't need a dog page. And we agree. Then all you need to do is to X out that top in the upper right, and that gets rid of that. So you can add a whole bunch of pages. You can rearrange the pages. So let's say I need about to be over here and contact to be over here. You can rearrange that however. And again, thinking in terms of menus, that makes sense. So you'll be able to dynamically rearrange your menu in here, and you'll be able to keep track of what pages are where. It's just very easy to use, and I really like that part of it. Now we can also add child pages underneath here. So let's say for a contact page, we want to have something like driving directions. Maybe we want to have a specific page, you know, with a list of different directions. And then portfolio, you know, it makes sense. Let's say we have logos, and let's say we also have websites. We can add another one too if we wanted. Let's brochures. And then from there, you can even branch out further. So we could do like nonprofit brochures, and IT brochures. Let's say that's something that we get a lot of requests for. Oh my goodness. Having trouble typing there. I guess you guys won't judge me on my spelling. So you can see here immediately how you get this really nice bird's eye view of your pages and how they relate to each other. I love this. I think this is one of the nicest features about Muse. I work with WordPress a lot, and I would love to see some kind of overview like this in the pages. I just think that the layout of it is really nice. I also want to bring it up to, information up here to show you that you can change the size of these, so you can make it bigger if you want, or if you need more room on here. Let's say you've got a lot of pages, you can make it smaller and get a better sense. So you've got a lot more room to kind of play with when it comes to how these look visually. Now this is just for your information. This is not going to show up on the actual website. This is just your planning scenario. Master pages, if you've ever worked with any kind of templating system, like if you've ever created a PowerPoint presentation, you know that you kind of have a master template. That's exactly what this is. You can change the name of this, of course. Let's call it standard layout. And these are going to be things that are going to go carry across every single page of the site, or at least every page that's associated with it. Now you saw originally it said a master, and every one of these was associated with a master. Now it is changed to standard layout because that's the only available layout. If we go into this layout, we'll double click to get inside of here a little further, and we create, let's say, just like a rectangle or something silly here, and let's give it a really obnoxious color. When we click back out of here, and now we're in design mode, we're going to click back to plan mode, you'll see that every single one of these associated with it has that in it. If we go in and change it, let's say, let's say we move it now to like the middle, go back to plan, and you'll see every other one shifts over. So it's really nice. I think you'd be crazy not to use a master page, especially for things like logos, headers, footers, maybe even sidebar if you're going to have a sidebar all the way through. But let's say you're only going to have a sidebar on certain pages, you could do sidebar layout. Now you've created a new master page with a sidebar layout. So let's make a hideously colored sidebar so that we can see it really well. There we go. And we'll go back to plan. And you'll see now none of these are associated with this particular master template. But let's say we want to have sidebars on our portfolio page and brochures and the different brochure pages. So now you'll see these ones are now associated with the sidebar layout, and the rest of these are associated with the standard layout. Now again, if I double click into here and make a change on the sidebar, let's say I realize, oh man, my sidebar is just, it's just not wide enough. It's just not working for me. I need to make it bigger. So I'm going to make it even larger, go back to plan, and you'll notice all of those shift. You could individually go into each one of these and create a sidebar and then have it go through, but that would be a really clunky way to do it, and I would highly recommend using a master page. Anything that's going to be repeated, if you find yourself repeating something, let's say you didn't plan with a master page, but as you're going through, you're like, you know what, I'm really using this, this layout a lot. It just makes sense to create a master for it, use that, and then let that carry through. So any little changes, you know, when the client comes back to you and says, hey, I need it 2 pixels to the left, you don't want to punch yourself in the face because you realize, well, I'll just shift the master one over and then we're good to go. So it's just good practice. Now, unlike InDesign, Muse does not allow you to override the master page within it. So what I did here was, let's go back, I clicked on portfolio and I'm like, I just want it changed for this particular page. Can't happen that way. You cannot have it do that. It won't let you select that object. So in InDesign, you might be able to do that. Here, you are not able to do that. So your options for that would be to remove it, create a new layout for that, create a new master layout for that, or just do something specific for that particular page if it's like a one-off. So let's look a little bit about what we can change within this. And I'm going to shift this over so it's not quite so obnoxious. Yeah, I guess it's still pretty obnoxious, but you get the point. So again, we can't change anything on the master. It won't let us select that. But we can select and make changes to multiple items and create multiple items within this particular page. Now, let's just do a quick example here. Now, right now, we're only working within this home page. So when I click back to plan, you'll see this page has the blue square in it, but none of the other ones do because I didn't change it on the master. I'm just changing it on the home page. So now let's click away from this for a while. Initially, you could click here and you'll see your options at the top, but we're going to click away from that and we're just going to deal with the actual page itself options. So we've got some items here. We can choose fill. Okay. This will be your background color. We can change the stroke on that if we want, which is, oh, you can't really see that very well. Let me change the color here a little bit. There we go, more obnoxious colors. Now this is the color of the page itself. If we want to take a quick look here, let's see if we can preview this real quick. There you go. So you'll see you've got kind of here's your maximum width. You defined it as 960. You've got the sidebar, the rest of the website here. That's just your standard browser. And you see how you filled it in with this particular color. Let's go back to design. Boy, I think we're gonna go colorblind looking at this, but it's okay, you get the point. The next item we have here is corner options. Now you can select any one of these or all of them, and this will change your corner radius, you'll see. So you can kind of make a rounded corner here. Let's go preview that. So we went from regular corners to rounded corners. And you can always change that back. So we go back to standard. Okay. And we've also got browser fill. I'm trying to pick a color we haven't used yet. Here, let's see, yellow. Okay, now you'll see the browser fill shows what is on the sides of your design. So you've got your main design area here, that's your 960 width. This then fills in what the rest of your browser is. So you don't necessarily just have to have it be white, but you won't see it in here. Now let me see if I can zoom out a little bit. Maybe it won't give us a chance. No, you're not going to see that. It won't let you view it here because this is your standard like Adobe Muse background. But your browser fill, it will show you that. All right, so let's take a look at different objects we can have in Muse and take a look at what's available for that as well. Oh, you know what, let me back up a second here. Let me click away from here. And I wanted to show you this too. For browser fill, you can choose, obviously you can do like a gradient or fill. You can also add an image to that, which I think is pretty cool. Oh, there's my daughter with my husband, or I'm sorry, my dad. Oh no, I made the mistake of clicking all my files. We'll just wait a moment here while that chugs along. I hate when I do that, when I do all my files. I meant to just click to the desktop here. So while we wait, you can probably imagine I have a lot of files on my machine. Okay. Well, maybe not. I'm just waiting here for this to load so that I can not look at all my files. I really should just remove that option from my menu here because I do that so often, just kind of automatically thinking, oh, I'll choose all my files and realize like it's every file on my computer. It takes forever. But what I'm going to show you here is you can choose to select an image and then have it tile, and then you can even choose like where it starts on with it, which is pretty cool. It does really easy tiling. Now you can choose not to tile it, but tiled background's pretty common. If you didn't tile it, you'd have to have a really large image, and that can be a problem with load times and stuff. So you just want to test that out really well before you commit to that. Okay, now I've backed out of that, and I apologize for the delay on that. So we're going to do this one. This I got from a website that does really nice, simple backgrounds. Okay, and that should be my browser fill. So let's preview that since we can't really see it. And now you can see I've got my symphony swirl background that goes in there as well. And that's set to tile because that is how we had it set. You can choose all these other options as well, but that won't make sense in this case. Let's talk for a little bit here about establishing header and footer areas with special guides. Now, when you build a website, obviously the pages vary in length and it's going to just be based on the different content you use. But in order to keep a consistent appearance across all these pages with unique content, we want to establish a header and footer region. In a Muse, these regions are controlled by a series of special guides. So we're going to go to the master page for this because we want it to be on everything, not just that one. And if we zoom out just a hair, and you can see this pretty well here, but you'll see we've got these guides here. These are special guides. And they do a special, they have special things that they do for Muse. Now they have standard guides here too. Like if you're a big fan of lining stuff up with guides, you can just do what you've always done in the other Adobe programs and drag it down and up. But these ones in particular are special. And if you're not sure what's what, you can just always use the tooltips here. So we've got the top of the page, the first thing we're going to look at. And this is the top of like where the browser sits with your page. So let's take a look. I just moved that down. You see we've got like a bit of white space there. And you'll see here what happens. Let me go back and maybe I can do a better definition of that. Now let's pretend like this is my header. That will help us get a better sense of that. So let's pretend that this is the header. And now you'll see my header it's got some breathing room up here at the top. That can be good or bad, just depending on however you want your design to work. But let's say I want it to be butted right up at the very top whenever I view it. So I just drag that top guide up. And if I preview again, you'll see now it's moved up to the very top of where the browser would show. File preview is the best thing ever. I just thought it's really just, it's such a quick way to see if everything's coming along like how you think it's going to be coming along. And you'll notice that none of this is requiring any kind of code at all. We're doing it all visually, just like we would do layout in InDesign or Illustrator or Photoshop even. Here we have your header guide. Now this is nice. Let's see, we want the header to be here. So we've got the top of our page here, and we've got our header here. Okay. And then down here next, we have our footer. Now this allows you to have special things in the footer, and this is kind of where your sticky footer comes into play too. This helps with this. Okay, your footer, and then here, let me drag these apart here. So we've got the bottom of the page. That's going to define where it actually stops the page, and then we've got the bottom of the browser. So we can have some breathing room there too. So let's take a look here. You'll see if we drew it right up against it, then the bottom of the browser would end there. So let's do that. So here's the bottom of the browser, and just like the top, now you'll see there's no white at the bottom. But you can decide if you want to have some room there or not, which is really, really nice. Let's add something here to this page. I gotta get away from greens. I must be in like a very green mood here today. Ooh. Let's do red. Okay. All right. Now we can choose to make this part of the footer, this particular object. And if we move it down, it should move down with it. It'll like anchor it to the footer. I think this is gonna, you'll see here, it pushes things down, so you'll see how this goes down with it. But this works better outside of the master page. Okay. So these guides are your friends. You'll want to make sure that you always set them in your layouts. That's the best way to go with that. And now, of course, we've got our master page that we updated, so every other one here is going to be updated as well. In our next video, we're going to talk about adding content to these pages.